Hello everyone, I'm Adi. I'm an intermediate over the board chess player. So this is going to be the first video on opening ideas and studies. And as you all know, I am a Sicilian player. I've been going for c5 against e4 almost every game. And there's a setup I face which I found skeptical to face as always. And even when I try to play blitz, I see people going for that as soon as possible. And the setup I'm talking about is the McDonnell Attack. It's a very dubious opening if you know how to play it, but it gives white a lot of advantages if you don't respond to it properly. It's more of like it's more of like yeah, one sec, let me just set the timer so that I don't go overboard. So it's more of an improper Grand Prix attack. So the move order for the McDonnell attack is e4, c5, and f4. So white's plan is to develop this knight to f3 without the pressure of you playing g4 and doubling white's pawn structure. And also there's always ideas of knight coming to e5, pressuring the queen on c7, because most of the times you only have your queen on c7 in the Sicilian, maybe sometimes b6, but that's essentially white's plan is in this structure. And also to gain a very quick attack through the flanks if you decide to castle kingside in the Sicilian. Also, there's another move order to get into this position. That is when you go f4. I'm very sure almost people who play the bed, I play the bed myself, and you can get the transposition from the bed as well. If c5, if white decides to play f3, then you're in the proper bed structure now. But white can decide to play e4, and after c5 you end up in the same position, which is the McDonnell attack. This opening is, I think, in terms of soundness, I'll probably say at my own level, which is like intermediate level, I'll probably say something around maybe 8/10 if you don't know how to fight against it. But at the top level, I'm very sure this is more of like white being satisfied with the draw. If in a serious game white decide to play this, if there's no serious surprises here and there, black is always going to be able to win or make a draw in this position. But at the intermediate level, anything can happen. So so after e4, c5, and after f4, there's all sort of moves ranging from knight c6, there's e6. I'm very sure there's even d6 if you decide to do something like that, and there's d6 in this position as well. I would probably be covering those kind of move order next time if you do enjoy this video. But the move I will be looking into is the Tal Gambit. As you all know, Tal is a ferocious attacker. Is always I think Tal is one of the best tactical player that exists in the chess world. So you know, if an opening ends the name of Tal, it's probably something very, very chaotic where 1 + 1 is equals to 22. So the Tal, the invitation to the Tal Gambit style with d5, and there's different ways for white to respond to this position. There's d3, there's knight f3, there's bishop b5, there's e5. I'll be focusing on two moves, which is e5 and ed5. So e5, white declines the pawn, hoping to have a very solid center, but this doesn't work because at the end of the day you'll be able to like develop e5 weakens the the f5 square, and it's more of like an after e6, it's more of like an improved French position for black. And as I go further down, you would see why this is like extremely bad for white if played properly. So after d5, I'll be looking first as d5, which is white declining to take the pawn and maintain is the beautiful pawn structure. So let's say e5, declining the pawn. There's no problem with that. After knight c6, which is the best move here. But I mean, knight c6 is a move, knight h6 is a move. The ideas of, I think you can absolutely miss up the move order here. You can even be something like bishop f5 is still very good in this position. So knight h6, because, and this is why e5 is bad. The f5 square, the knight will be able to come to f5. The ideas of playing bishop f5 now is to just prevent white from pushing this pawn further, and there will always be ideas of h6 in the future after knight, or even h5 in the future, and after knight h6 the bishop will come back to h7 and you safely put the knight on f5, and this is just positionally pretty bad for white. So let's say knight e6, b5 can be tried, bishop b5 can be tried, but after bishop d7 a6 is coming next, forcing white to trade. If white goes back, that's just a loss of tempo, and you know, maybe not at the intermediate level, but very certainly at the master level, tempos matter a lot in the game. So let's say knight f3, then bishop f5. I'm majorly focusing on the move that is played between the range of so I'm focusing on the intermediate rating level, which is like 1000 elo rating to 1800. So these are just the most common move in this let me say the common move in this position. So after knight c6, white can decide to play b5, which is not a terrible move. But after bishop d7, knight f3, a6, if black decides to go back, there will be knight h6 to come into f5, there will be e6, or even bishop f5 if white decides to go back, e6, bishop e7, then you safely castle. And anytime white decides to castle on the king side, which is mostly what white is going to do in this position, h5 is going to come, and there's just a very gruesome attacking coming at the king side, and our king on the king side is going to be super safe, that there's just no way for white to reach out to the king. So after e5, knight c6, black will play knight f3. It's not like this is not a forced move. White can decide to play knight f3, which is not bad. So after knight f3, we play bishop f5, and this is the idea. After bishop f5, if white decide to play d4, maybe ed4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, and that's just almost winning. e6 is going to come regardless of what happens, and this is more like you can just imagine a position of, let's say, d3 and e6. This is more of just like an improved French for black. The knight is going to come to h6, or you can even decide to play h5, knight h6, bishop coming to h7, you can play g6, the bishop coming to e7 and castle, and there's just no way for black to immediately get to our king. While there will be an idea of a5, queen b6, and after, if the king decides to castle, there will always be an idea of c4, discover that check, and black should be fine. So after bishop f5, black decided to, so most of the time you in this rating range, players play something like this, which is bishop b5. You don't want to play this is one of the reasons why this is just so positionally good for black. In this position now, the bishop has been developed to f5 with the ideas of there's rook c8 coming now. So anytime the bishop take, we are going to take with the rook, and we can just safely pay on from there. You don't want to play e6 because you eventually give white the option to just run the pawn structure. This is what people that play the bet, this is what we hope for, is when we are able to just double black pawn structure like this. But since you have an black has a tempo up in this position with bishop f5 already, and the rook is able to just come to c8, and no matter what happens, you'll be able to just take immediately with the rook. And after knight h6 or g6, bishop g7, kingside castling, h5 is coming, because black is short on developing on this side. It will be very difficult to develop this bishop in time to be able to castle kingside. And even castle kingside, we will play h6. White can decide to go back to trade the bishop, which even further improve our position. But most of the times when white commits to bishop b5, they always just want to take in this position because it's just a loss of tempo going back with the bishop. So d3, aiming for, you know, defending this pawn and developing the knights later on. So a6, and in this position, one sec. Okay, did I just mess it up again now? So yeah, so rook c8 is played, I said, and we play queen here. So in this position, d3 is a blunder. I want you to just pause the video and figure out why this is a blunder in this position. So d3 is a blunder because of, I think I've showed why d3 is a blunder, but you can still pause the video to figure out why d3 is a blunder in this position. Because most of the times when you play maybe the open Sicilian or the closed Sicilian, you always have the knight on c3, and I'm very sure you would have seen the tactics where you play d5, and when the knight moves, you always have queen a5 check, picking up the bishop on b5. So d3 here is a mistake. So let's say white play d3, you play queen a5 check, which is an absolutely brilliant move, and different things can be tried. Bishop d2 loses the pawn. If knight c3, you have d4. So let's say knight c3, which after d4, if bishop takes c6 check, there's rook takes 6-6, and this is if bishop d2 now. After dc3, if the bishop take, there's ideas of queen b6, which works well. So after this, b4 can be tried by white, but this is all still just losing, because after rook c8, you can just decide to take here, and after queen a2, black is up a piece and a pawn, and this is just completely winning. I mean, there's ideas of rook takes b7, but even that, we will develop our knight to h5, g6. The rook can always come to c8 and forcing the trade. Even there's rook b6 in this position, so this is just much better for black. So that's why d3 is a blunder in that kind of position. So after a6, so that's why a6 is a blunder. So most of the time you see, I think this is almost similar to what the great super grandmaster Vasily Ivanchuk tried against, not at this exact move or that, but he tried it against Anish Giri when he was 19 in the Leon Master in 2013, and he lost. So after a4, a6, black has to trade. Like, it's not like force. If they go back, that's just a loss of tempo. So most of the time you see black taking, and then there's just rook takes c6, and after that, this is just a completely much better position for white to play. I mean, there's something like castle, but after queen b6, if d4, there's ed4. This is just a very good position for black to play. You can further analyze this, like you can further check this on your own and see how good this. This is just minus 0.5 for black already, with ideas of e6, knight h5, bishop e7, and castles. And just like you've seen, white is going to need to spend an extra tempos to get to h1, because there's always ideas of queen b6 pushing c4 as a discovered attack on the king. So that is why e5 is not the best in this position, but at my level you would often see people try it, which is kudos to them for doing that, but it just doesn't work. Black has more than 55% win rate after e5. So if you see someone who is ready for fight, I mean, there's ideas of b5. In b5 you try this, knight d7. If they take, you take with the queen, and if take now, you just take back, and this is just already good for black. And if they don't try the bishop b5 move or that, they can decide to do d3. I'm just trying to, I don't want to go too deep into this. You can decide to take, queen takes on d1, king d1. The NG says is equal, but if you're someone who likes to grind the position, who likes to grind their opponent down positionally, maybe at the intermediate level, black should be doing fine as well, because you still have an option to castle. But since the queens are off the board, there's no huge need to castle in that position. So we'll be looking at when white decide to take the pawn on d5. Then you play knight f6. Knight f6, there's different things for white to try here. I'll briefly touch on bishop b5. With bishop b5 here, you play bishop d7. If they take, you take back with the queen, and after taking back with the queen, they can decide to go c4, which is what almost people of my rating try here. Like people at the intermediate level, this is what you want to try. White is up a pawn and they want to hold on to it. But after e6 now, with the ideas of take, queen takes, and this position, I think this is one of the few positions where you can just safely trade the queens, because this is just a very much better position for for black to play. So you take knight takes, and after knight c6, if castles, you castle queen side. The bishop is going to come to d6. Maybe you can even play g6 to play bishop g7, and the rook is going to come to e8, and the black rook are already having the control on the open file. It's going to be difficult to quickly develop this bishop. It's going to take an extra tempo for this rook to come into the game. h5 is going to come next. This knight can always come to b4, blockading this pawn on d3, and this is just, I'm very sure if anyone who is much higher rated than me is watching this video, they probably have an idea, a deep idea of what I'm talking about. This is just positionally pleasing for white. A quick glance at, it's just, if white doesn't tread carefully, this is close to like minus 0.5 for black already, although I'm checking with the Lichess engine. So maybe if you check with the supercomputer, it's set 0.0, but you know, at the 1000 to 1600, even 1800 level, this is just there's still very much life into this kind of game. So this is if white decide to play c4. So let's see the idea of after knight f6, if white plays b5, you get into the same thing, you trade, and they come. Knight f3 is a nice try, but at least we immediately get back the pawn, right? We immediately get back the pawn, and after d4 is a mistake because of this. If take now, we take back with the knight, right? If take, we take back with the knight. Queen takes on e8, king takes on d8, the king comes to c7. If bishop, what c4 does now is they can't easily develop into the game with their bishop. Our rook is going to immediately control the open file. h5 is coming, and black just starts steamrolling white in this position. So that is the idea of if they decide to play knight f3. And I think I've showed the ideas behind bishop b5. Bishop b5 is just leads to a very transposition into just what I explained. They can decide to play c4 here, but after e6 still, they can try knight c3 here, but after takes, knight takes, I think black wins in this position 53% of the time. So if queen check, bishop e7 with castles, bring our rook to d8, there's just this pawn is hanging, there's just immense attack. And at the end of the day, you kind of, in these structures, whatever minor pieces black has is always much better than black structure. Like if you have a bishop and a knight, your bishop is always going to be better than white knight. If you have a knight for white bishop, your knight is always going to be better than white bishop. It's just, and I think when I was looking into this is the first gambit, because I'm not a gambit player, I don't like it putting excessive pressure on myself, but this is the first gambit I was able to analyze on my own, and I didn't even felt at some point that I'm down a piece, like that I'm down a pawn. I didn't even felt, because you just have the play from black is just extremely easy and it just flows. You know, when they say a position flows, like this is what you get when the position just flows. And after, in this position, white can decide to play a very tricky move, which is knight f3. And here, this is an like this a transposition back into the bed. So this is just a gambit for white. So what white is trying to do is, you know, quickly put their knight on e5 with the idea of bishop b5. If queen c7, bishop b5 check, bishop takes, knight takes. But even this, at the long run, there's no immediate compensation for white's idea. And in this position, I think one of the things I explained was, you know, bishop b5, bishop, if knight here, no, it's not in this move order. Yeah, okay, it's in this move order. Knight d7, knight f3. If d4, they want to play knight e5, and after knight f6, this is defended twice. So you're going to play a6 and force them to just completely trade down. And after, if they take, just like I've explained earlier, we take and we are just completely, and in this position, white can decide to go for something like this after taking, which is why they played knight f3. In this position, there's queen e6, there's queen c7. Queen e6 is just, you know, pinning this rook down. If you play queen d8, it gives up the advantage for white, for black in this position. So after queen e6, I just think that with what I checked earlier, black is just completely fine in this position. If they take, bishop d6 is going to come. We are going to castle queenside, and just like you, if you're someone that likes a mix of a positional and tactical position, I think this is very much good for you. And I just want to check if I've covered everything to be covered. This is just a short opening ideas and study. I will be dropping the PGN for anyone who is interested to just check on their own. So I've covered d5, I've covered e5, I've covered knight f3, I've covered bishop b5 as well. Bishop b5 leads to the same idea again. There's knight d7, just like I've said, there's knight f6, and from there on, black is just better. So I'll be showing a game. Just like I said, I'm an intermediate player, so I don't have an insane knowledge on Masters game. So this is the game between the great Vasily Ivanchuk and the super grandmaster Anish Giri. I think this game was played when Anish Giri was 19. I'll be just going through over it as soon as I can, because I think I'm already spending a chunk of time on this video and I don't want to make it extremely long. So e4, and you should know that Ivanchuk is like a very ferocious attacker as well, so he's probably going to accept the gambit. So he played this just like I've said, and this position, what Ivanchuk did in this game was he refused to take on d7, which taking doesn't make his position any better, and And after this, you see g6, bishop g7. Even before g6 here, I think something like a6 here was already better. Instead of g6, a6, and if bishop goes back, then you can play g6, g7, then castle. But I mean, probably that was his prep then. So g6 now, castles. And what Anishgiri did in this game was really good, because he was able to get away with not trading his knight. So he was able to get away with not trading his knight and won back the pawn. This is just a very, very good position for black to play. This equal pawn. And one thing I forgot to mention when I was speaking earlier was that I'm still very much nervous about this whole process, is that at any point that the gambited pawn, you were able to recover it. At any point, black is not significantly better, but black is doing great. The best option for white is just to keep, massaging and holding up to the pawn. But at any point that black is able to get back the pawn, because one thing this Tal Gambit is all about is it gives you rapid development. It's just not other gambits where you gain rapid development at the expense of that. If you're not able to get back that pawn, you'll be lost. In this gambit, even with the notion that you do not get back the pawn immediately, which you are always going to get back, black is still much better. So at any point in time that black is able to get back the pawn, white is going to struggle to get back into the game. So I think when I checked earlier, a4 here was already a mistake. Just taking immediately was better. And anytime c4 is being played before developing the bishop to b5, it kills any ideas of the bishop developing to b5. So that's an extra advantage for black. So the great played a4, castles, he played knight b7, a6. He was able to win back the pawn. And after a6, I think this is an idea you should take away. There's always idea of playing e6 in this game. Like e6 needs to be played to just open up the position and just go for the king as soon as possible. And if you're able to see this bishop on e6 and g7, they are just much better to this. This bishop is probably going to come back or end up trading itself for one of this piece for this knight. And the king here, you can notice that with something like h5 coming, queen coming to c7, it's just extremely good. So take. So I'll just go over this game and get into the end game. And you would notice what I discussed about the idea of whatever piece you end up with in the end game is always going to be better. And at this point already, black. And one more thing to add is that if you're able to gain back that pawn, and at any point in the game you were able to win a pawn, with perfect play, black is completely winning. That's just something good about the position. Black is just completely winning. There's no hope for black to get back into the game. And at this point, you could see that Anish was actively going. I don't know if I should call him Anish or Giri. Giri was actually going to trade down to piece because he has a pawn majority on the queen side, and he's just going to convert. And at the end of the day, this bishop is just good. This idea of a good bishop and a bad knight. This bishop is just good compared to the knight, and he was able to massage it and just maneuver the bishop and keep going forward. And there was just no way for Ivanchuk to prevent this pawn from queening. So I think this is close to 20 minutes. So I've come to the end of this video. I will be exploring this in my own game as well. So if you wish to see if you wish to see this kind of video format in the future, drop your comment below. You can comment any opening you want me to cover, and I'll try my best as possible to do that. Thanks for watching. Bye.